Today we've got 4 ways for you to tackle raw edge applique on the long arm. Welcome to Handi Quilter Watch and Learn. I'm Kim Sandberg and
I'm Kristina Whitney.
And today we are going to take on raw edge applique. It's so much fun to do on the long arm, isn't it?
It is, and it's so easy.
Yes, I love it.
Yes. So I know you've done a little bit of applique work.
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't done much like real applique, like turning the edges. And it's a little bit intimidating to me, and I like to use my time efficiently, so sometimes I don't really want to spend the time to do it. So I do a lot of raw edge applique, but sometimes we don't want to see the raw edges. So we're going to talk about a few different ways that we can cover the raw edge applique.
I love it. I love it. And I love being able to just do it all in the long arm. You load that, you include it with the quilting, and it's all done when you take it off. Yeah. It's great.
And there's a couple of ways that you can do it. So we'll take a look at this right here. So for this particular block, I just set the block on here. I glued it on with an Elmer school glue, and then I basted it just to hold it in place. And I only did that because I knew my quilt was going to be traveling back and forth, and I wanted it to be able to stay. But if you peek underneath,
look at that.
You'll see that I didn't do any stitching underneath.
So you actually did this background stitching once this had already been basted in place.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you wanted to, you could stitch this whole background and then put the raw edge applique over the top of the stitching.
Okay.
Which is actually how I have it on the quilt that's hanging up behind us.
Okay, let's take a look at this one.
So I've got the tree background that I stitched out first. And then I put the mousse applique over top of the background and stitched that down.
That is adorable.
So choosing if you want the background to show behind the applique or not, that's probably step number 1.
Okay. And this applique pattern, so cute. I think you were going to tell us about where you found this cute applique pattern here.
Yes, this was a free download from Shiny Happy World. And she had some great stuff there, and I really like the mousse, so.
It's so cute. I love that. So you can find that online at Shiny Happy World.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I did resize it. It wasn't the original size. I wanted to make it bigger.
Okay.
But yep. Okay, so let's go back to this one.
Okay.
So I laid down my raw edge applique, and for this example, I've already gone through and I've stitched in the ditch, holding all of those sections down.
Okay, so this was pieced, and then you laid it down, basted it in place, then you've done stitch in the ditch to stabilize it, essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
If you look at this one right here, I haven't done the stitch in the ditch.
Okay.
This one's just basted on, so when I get to that block, I can do my stitch in the ditch, and then I'm going to go around the edge of the applique.
Okay.
So this one, again, is already stitched down, and I used a Surefoot with my baby grand ruler just to stitch those straight lines.
Perfect.
And my ruler base. Okay, now when I did this basting here, I used my glide foot because it went over smoothly and I didn't have to really worry about it catching on anything.
Nice.
Or shifting it. Now for the fun part though, I'm going to use foot number 3 in the arsenal today.
Okay.
And we're going to use the couching foot.
All right.
And I'm actually going to couch around these edges. If you look over here at this one, you can see how I've already couched it.
Now, do you need to stitch down that edge before you couch it, or do you just do it all in one go?
That is an excellent question. Looking back at this one, there were a couple sections that I actually stitched across, and I did that because that was my travel line getting between the stitch and the ditch.
Okay.
The others, I'm not going to worry about stitching them down right now. If you have problems with it shifting though, it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and stitch around the edges if you wanted to.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to bring my machine over here.
And you already have the couching foot on the machine ready to go.
Yep, I've got the largest size on there. And let's talk about my settings real quick. So let's look up here at the screen. I have set it on a cruise, so it's regulated cruise, and I drop my speed down a little bit, and I can play with that as I'm going. I did increase my stitches per inch because I want that needle to puncture through the yarn a little bit more frequently to hold it in place.
Okay.
And the last thing I want to point out is I do have it to stop in the needle down position.
Okay.
So if I ever need to take a break or anything, I can hit that stop button. Needle's going to stop down and hold my place there on the quilt.
All right.
Okay, so let's come over to this guy. And you can see as I'm moving this foot, that fabric is shifting a little bit. So if I wanted to, I could go back and, you know, like we mentioned earlier, stitch over the edge just to hold it down in place better.
Okay.
But I'm going to show you another trick. Just going to do a couple tie-off stitches.
All right, so to pull the yarn into the couching foot, you do your needle down, needle up, then you wrap the yarn around that thread.
See, and I pulled it under the needle and folded it in half. With one hand, I'm holding bobbin thread, top thread,
Okay.
2 layers of the yarn, move it back into position, needle down, needle up,
Okay.
and then I'm going to hold on to that thread and pull it through.
All right, now you've got that yarn inside the couching foot.
Yep. And I'm going to do this free motion for just a second, and we're going to see if we like that, and if we don't, we're going to use a ruler. Okay, so I'm just stitching along the edge of that fabric. And I'm going to pause there, trim off my tails. Okay, if I wanted to, I could bring in my baby grand ruler, and that's going to hug right up against the foot. And I've got to be careful because I don't have my Surefoot on. So we're just going to kind of go slow. Now I'm going to try with my ruler, and that's going to help hold the fabric down a little bit and also help me guide the yarn.
So that's what the little notch is for, huh?
Yep. I got to make sure that I don't get any knots in my yarn. So that's one way you could do it. You can also rotate the ruler and see how my ruler's pretty close to the shape there. I can just go around the edge.
Kind of helps you control the fabric, doesn't it?
It's holding that fabric down in place. Okay. There we go. Now I could go around and do a second layer if I wanted to. Like I think this one I did 2 layers, and that helps cover up any spots that I might have missed. If not, I can just cut my yarn right there. And then I'm just going to do a couple little stitches over that to hold it down. And now I've got my raw edge covered.
Oh, that was really quick and easy.
It was. I definitely would go back and add another layer because you can see like some of the other fabric. And sometimes after a while that might even just fray off and not be an issue. But yeah, the second layer will help keep things in place.
Oh, so cute.
Couching, that is one way that you can cover up the raw edge.
Right.
Okay. Another way, we kind of peeked at this earlier with this moose here.
Yeah.
So this one, I did a blanket stitch on the long arm. And you can see the video of me doing that. It's just me moving the machine back and forth, kind of almost like zigzagging a little bit, but
It's really fun to do that, isn't it?
it is very therapeutic.
I love doing that.
I
think
pull up a stool, pop a squat, and go for it. Okay, another technique that we can use is, it's a product called Chenille It,
Yes.
and you can get that online. But this one is this fuzzy part right here. And you can just take it and put it right over top of the raw edge. So we've got this sample here. We've also got, I've used it with t-shirt quilts that I did as raw edge applique. And Kim, you've got another fun thing over there.
Yeah, I do. So I used this, and actually it was used this way on that one too, a fun little Halloween bag. And we did the Chenille It up here at the top instead of putting binding on the top. We just used it around the top of that. So just something fun that you can finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so couching, blanket stitch, Chenille It. What about just leaving the raw edge?
And just stitching next to that edge and just leaving it, letting it fray a little. I like it.
Yep.
You
So
can
we've got a couple
absolutely do that.
samples.
This is a fun quilt of that. This is actually using a pack of the 2.5-inch squares and just stitching them down on top of a solid piece of fabric. What a fun, easy quilt. And the more you wash it, the softer those little edges get.
Yeah. Yeah, my daughter was asking me about some easy projects to do with little kids. So this would be fabulous. Just give them a whole bunch of little squares and have them lay them out where they want them, and then you can stitch them down.
That's really great.
Okay.
Here is another quilt that's got that same idea. So tell us about this one, Kristina.
Okay, same concept, solid background, and then I took a bunch of pieces of fabric that my grandmother had cut, and I just rounded them off to make kind of a melon shape. And on the background fabric, I had drawn out ahead of time a grid.
Okay.
And I just took these pieces and I just kind of plugged them in, making that shape, and then stitched them down.
And didn't we do a video showing how to do this technique?
Yep, we did do a video with this one.
So we'll be sure and put that link in the description if you want to see how this one's done.
And this quilt actually sits on the back of my couch, and it gets used quite a bit. So you can see how it's definitely like fraying up, it's been washed, it's been loved. But it just keeps adding to it. So one of my favorite quilts that I've got.
Yeah, I love it. I love the texture that's on there. It's fantastic. And here's another really fun one that you made. This one I love. I've actually done one similar to this. So this one has the little flowers that were these die cut. So they're die cut and they're just stitched with that swirl in the center. So they feel really 3D. I love that.
Yeah. So the way I did it is I put the biggest size down, did a swirl in it, put the next size down, swirl, and then the smallest one and swirled. So even if the center's like kind of coming up, the bottom one kind of stays in place instead of just all coming up to the little tiny part. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes it does.
Like, it did in my head.
It absolutely makes sense. But I love it because it gives it that really 3D look because they're not all, it's not just a little bit in the middle that's holding. It's stabilized more all the way around.
Yeah. And this particular quilt, I did the background quilting prior to putting the raw edge applique on.
I wondered about that.
Yep.
That's a really fun quilt.
Yeah. Much easier than having to crop out around each one of those appliques.
Oh, I can't imagine. So quilt it first, then you go back through and add all those fun appliques, and you've got a really fun quilt. And you know, the best part was the only piecing you actually had to do on this one was putting the border around it. So you got to the quilting part really quickly on this one, didn't you?
Yeah, most of these I didn't really do much piecing ahead of time.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and this is a great way that you can use up scraps that you might have, or let's say you have orphan blocks.
Yes.
You can throw an orphan block in, like the Dresdens. If you have extra Dresdens, you can throw them on a background piece inside the quilt. So lots of fun things that you can do with that raw edge applique.
Things you can do. I've thought this would be so much fun to do if you happen to have like a die cutter. You can do all kinds of really fun shapes, like this fun little flower here, and just applique those on. It's so much fun. So much fun. Well, Kristina, this has been a lot of fun today. What a lot of just so many great ideas of how you can do really fast, fun, and easy raw edge applique. Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to use that hashtag Handi Quilter if you'd like to see one of your quilts featured at the end of one of our episodes of Watch and Learn. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe, and have fun quilting.